Well, happy Thursday, everybody. It's Thursday Live, and I'm thrilled to have you with me and with Lincoln. And if you're a first time guest of Thursday Live, Lincoln is always at my feet, or almost always at my feet. So we developed a live Lincoln cam just for him. And this is about as exciting as Lincoln gets. But for all of you Lincoln lovers, and I know some of you only show up for Lincoln, there he is, he's there, and I'm thrilled that you're here and that we can connect this way together. So thanks for joining me for Thursday Live. And I have to tell you, this is I don't know, I've just been swelling in my heart all week long because of so many things that transpired in this last week. And I'm so grateful. Not all of the things that I've experienced or that have been going on in my family circle have been positive, but God is so good, and He has poured out His grace and allowed us to experience His touch in our lives in a big way. And then Easter at Northridge. If you're a guest of Thursday Live and you don't know, I'm Brad Powell, and I'm the pastor of Northridge Church. And we had just a phenomenal Easter weekend in all of our environments. And I'm just very, very, I don't know, I'm grateful. My heart's a bit enlarged because of what happened this week, especially after the last 2 years we've had. And I'll get to that. But I thought that I'd say hi to you guys. We have Michael and Kathy and Carol and Sanda and Irvin and Kathy and Lola and Cheryl and Judy and a bunch of you all hanging here. And so I just want to say hi and thanks for joining me. And Jeanette Bovenseep said, "Did Lincoln get a haircut?" He did. He was groomed about 2 weeks ago now, I think. But he's ready for this warmer weather that's starting to pile in. And Nellie Rose said Easter weekend was wonderful. Yeah, and I'm actually going to talk about. And hi, Emily and Peter. Thanks, Emily, for doing that. I'm going to talk a little bit about Easter. This is going to be kind of an Easter review a little bit, and I'd love it if you guys, whether you're on YouTube, my channel, or the church's channel, or Facebook Live, the church's page, or my page, I'd love it for you to share your stories, and wherever you're sharing them, they come up on my screen. If I'm talking, I can miss it, but I would love to see some of the things that happened to you, because with Easter, maybe you invited someone and the impact of their life, or maybe you experienced something through the services that touched you and God worked in your life, or maybe, something else far and wide. We just need to share our stories. We don't want our stories to be lost. Maybe if you don't have a personal story, you can tell me what your favorite part of the Easter weekend service was, or Easter weekend. And that would be great. But before I get into sharing about Easter and my stories and that kind of thing, I thought I'd share some personal stuff. We got to have a very, very special event in the life of the Powell family, at least Roxanne and I, and our son Blake and his precious wife Nina, in that their son had his first birthday. And so we got to have a big birthday party, and I'll show you Benny. This is Benny with his cake, and he's being more dainty than I think I was when I was one, as it relates to he's actually putting the cake in his mouth and enjoying it. He's not sure about the camera. And then his sister, Bradley, sitting there, beautiful Bradley, kind of saying, "Why don't I get any cake?" Actually get jealous, but so that's Ben. And by the way, this is Benjamin Dean Powell. And so he's got the initials BDP after me, BDP, after his daddy, who is BDP Junior, BDP 2, and now he's BDP 3. So we celebrated his first birthday, which was really, really fun. And just love that family, love those kids, and so glad that we got to share in that moment. So that was cool. And then we got some bad news during the Easter weekend. Our granddaughter Nola was taken to the hospital. She's 11 years old. She was taken to the hospital for, well, they weren't sure what, but it turned out to be an appendicitis. And I mean, it went fast and furious, and she was in just serious pain. And when they did the surgery, they thought it'd be rather quick. It turned out to be 2 hours because the appendix burst. And you know, all those gangrenous fluids, it took 2 hours, the surgery, to clean her out. And then she had to stay in the hospital for several days, heavy antibiotics, and they took cultures, you know, to see if bacteria was growing. It was. But the very, very good news, and this is where God's grace is so cool, when you get to experience, you know, a positive outcome that is felt and seen. This was her coming home from the hospital today. And so I didn't ask permission to show this picture. Nola, I hope you don't mind. So after a really serious deal, she came home today and she's all smiles, still tired, can't do much for 6 weeks as she recovers from this thing, but she's glad to be home with her family. And so that's our precious Nola. I call her No or Nora. I don't know why, but there she is. So family stuff. And can I just tell you, the thing about Thursday Live is that this is just a personal sharing. This isn't like church service. This isn't sermonic. And I just, you know, my personal life, my family life is the most important part of my life. And most of you get to experience the professional side of my life, pastoral side, and you know, I am who I am, even as I minister. So you get to know me personally in those ways. But I really do believe the priority of life is God, family, and then, you know, church and ministry for me. And so I love sharing the things that are really, really important to me. And I had a bunch of other pictures, but I didn't slot them in. And so, but those are some personal things there. I'm going to come over and see you guys. I think are probably already talking about Easter, I hope. Yeah. Sandra said Easter service was great. Thank you for your great leadership. Thank you. I appreciate it. We have such a great team. Someone said, really enjoyed your talk this week. I said, well, it's pretty easy when you have a team. It's like T-ball for me. They put the ball right on a little tee, and all I have to do is swing the bat, and, you know, they've prepared it all for me. And I am so proud, so very proud of all the people and all the work, staff and volunteers who made Easter possible. And then I am so proud of all the people who are a part of the Northridge family who invited people into the Easter experience. And it was phenomenal all the way around. But if I could just say, it is a privilege to be the senior pastor, the leader at Northridge Church. But let me just tell you, my leadership would be nothing without the unbelievable talent and commitment of a very gifted team, from the creative side of our weekend expressions, all the people who create the elements. I mean, the ideas of the cross that came down. If you haven't seen the service, you got to see it. The idea of the parable book opening, which was terrific. The idea of the prodigal being done, and then the talent to bring it all off. It's unbelievable. And I'm so, so proud of our team. So thanks for, you know, your kind words to me, but I just want you to know my leadership's nothing without all the staff and volunteers who make this place an amazing place. Janelyn said it was so amazing to see everyone together, to see the auditorium packed was God's gift. That's the truth. I decided not to bore you with all the things that were exciting to me. I was standing in my office window looking out, and the traffic jam. And I'm really sorry if you were in a traffic jam and you hated it. But I absolutely adore when the Church of Jesus Christ, when, you know, a service where we're going to proclaim Jesus and his hope, creates traffic jams. I'm sorry, it's just brilliant. You know, we're willing to sit in traffic jams for a lot of other things. What a neat thing that at Northridge we had traffic jams this week. And I really was emotional about it, because I remember 2 years ago looking out the window. I actually showed a social media shot on my Instagram and Facebook. Easter morning, and there wasn't a car anywhere. The team and I showed up. We were in, you know, close to the building. There wasn't a car anywhere. Empty parking lots. empty, boulevards coming in, empty sidewalks, empty, 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 empty rooms, empty hallways, empty 16 Central, empty auditorium. And this weekend made me so emotional because last year was tougher. Pandemic was still raging. A lot of people didn't, do the in-person thing yet, even though we were. But this Easter weekend, to see all of our services just full, and then the 11:16 went crazy nuts. It was awesome. So Janelyn, I agree with you. It was God's gift, and I'm in awe that He's rebuilding His church. It's going forward. It's neat. Sue Wired said, funny, the timing online is behind by a few minutes. Oh, that's interesting. Jeanette said, I found my way home at Northridge. That's awesome. Gary Veenstra, praise God for the generous giving by all those at Northridge for the people in the Ukraine. Another one of the highlights, right, Gary? Thanks for saying that. That our church, in a matter of a little under 3 weeks, would give close to $500,000, and knowing that we were going to match to the first 250. And so we were able to give just under $750,000, 719,000 and change, right at 720,000. And one of my favorite parts was the 89 cents. There was 89 cents, and I was able to say we didn't want to round that up because some kid probably gave that 89 cents and they deserved to see it. But Gary, I'm with you, man. I'm in awe that we get to be a part of expressing Jesus' love and telling His truth around the world. And at a time in Ukraine when it's so desperately needed there. And I know we're going to bring hope there. Judy Rickman, your message opened up some new thoughts. That's cool. Thank you very much, Judy. I appreciate it. Carol Kay said, watched your service on Sunday from Arizona. It was great. Miss Northridge so much. Miss you, Carol. Used to be part of our security, used to be a big part of our ministry, and moved to Arizona. And thanks for staying connected. Let's see, the Song of the Prodigal. Right? The Song of the Prodigal. I'm going to come back to this, but that blew me away. I bet you that was a lot of your favorite parts. And then people are responding to, Jay had it on the wrong week. Oops. Sue and Jay, a big part of our ministry. I think they're in Florida right now. Sue, you in Florida right now probably, but you were behind, but Jay had it on the wrong week. That's awesome. Makes me laugh. Thanks for joining. The prodigal son and Easter, never connected the parable with Easter, but it's so powerful and perfect. Lori, that's fantastic. Lori Aaron, that means a great deal to me because it really is our story and the reason we needed Easter. So Coco Ford said, hello, Pastor Brad and the Northridge family. I returned to church in person for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I was so happy to enjoy Easter service with my Northridge family. God bless you, Pastor Brad. Thanks. And I appreciate that so much, Coco, and it's so great to have you back in person. I'm glad you feel comfortable doing that, and you're there and you're engaged. That's really cool. Jenny Yates said, my niece accepted the Lord during kids' church on Easter Sunday. How amazing. What a wonderful service. I'm telling you the impact. That's so exciting. Congratulations, Jenny, about your niece. That's really neat. And I have to tell you, I've had reports that have come in of people who've come to faith through the Easter time, and it's just life-changing that we get to be a part of that. It's just, I don't know. It expands my heart. That's the only way I can say it. Chris Marie's grateful for online services. She was sick. I loved Evan's song with the orchestra, and on it goes. Marie said, we started our Easter Sunday with some worship music, and Jesus had a word for our family that we honored Him, and He blessed us too. Elaine said the prodigal son performance with Evan, orchestra, Paul Black was phenomenal. And I need to also say, Suzanne, our pianist, that was a hard song. She is one of the best pianists anywhere, and it was still a very stressful experience. Suzanne, proud of you. Appreciate you doing that. And on it goes. Okay. Patricia says, I was able to share the message of the prodigal yesterday at an appointment. God provided the timing. Thank you for your leadership. Patty Daig, I just really appreciate that. That's cool that God, you were already able to use that message in sharing with another person. I want to share a story, and out of this story then will come my little spiritual thought. I'm encouraged. This is just about a time to break away and be encouraged spiritually. There's so much that can depress us as we go forward in life, and here we are encouraging each other. And sometimes, because just so you know, if you've never made a comment, I love these comments. After Thursday Live, I go back and read them all. I'm encouraged by them, and you're encouraging each other. So it's really, really, really cool. Melanie said, love the service so much. Easter's my favorite holiday. I couldn't stop the tears. It was so beautiful. Okay. I agree with you, Melanie. It's emotional. So much. Oh, and by the way, someone said it was wonderful to see Paul Black up there. Yeah. It was. And I've been doing ministry with Paul for 31 years, and it never gets old to me. Never gets old. In fact, I remember years and years ago, Roxanne and I became really good friends with Paul's mom and dad. They were called G Daddy and G Mama, grandparents. And we got to know Paul and Shirley so well. And I'll never forget, several years into Paul being here, he had been a speech teacher in college level and high school level. And he said it was like Paul and I were each other's biggest fans. He said, watching me watch Paul direct worship and then watching Paul listen to me teach, it was like, we held each other up in very high esteem, and we have all these years. That's how you work together for 31 years and stay best friends as well. So having Paul Black lead, and I've never met in ministry an orchestral leader like Paul. He's unbelievable. So I have a story to tell. I met a lot of people. I met a lot of you maybe, and I'm so glad I got to see old friends and meet first-timers. I got to walk through 16 Central. One person said, I've been coming here 15 years and I've never met you personally. And I go, that's the problem with being limited to space and time. I walk through the whole ministry, but I'm going to be in a different place. But we got to meet, and that was really neat. But there was this one, I was upstairs in the new 16 Central loft area, and people everywhere, and I was talking to someone, and this young man, I think he was 6 years old, this young man just ran over across the whole loft way and jumped right in front of me and went, like this to me. And just very warm, very friendly. I had never seen this young man ever in my life. Didn't know him from the Man on the Moon. But he, hey, Pastor Brad, hey, Pastor Brad. And then all of a sudden, and so I ended my discussion and I talked to him, and then his parents walked over and said, I'm so sorry he jumped in. I said, are you kidding? That's awesome. There's a kid who likes me. And they said, what's interesting is we've been watching online for 6 weeks. They started watching, had never been to Northridge, started watching online for 6 weeks. And this was their very first time, they told me later in the conversation, very first time to attend in person at Northridge's family. And yet this young man, and they said it's so remarkable, he watches the whole service with them online, and it had been 6 weeks, and they said he already feels like he knows you personally, and that's why he jumped up and said, hey. And the power of online church, like to be that engaging that a young man can feel like he's already connected to me as, his pastor, even though he had never met me personally, is really awe-inspiring. But I want to tell you about this couple. Actually, the husband, the dad of this young man, he proceeded to tell me a story about Keith Green. And, Keith Green is the one who created The Prodigal that we did, that 13-minute song or so that we did for Easter. And Keith Green is the artist that, the genius artist, the passionate artist that invented that music. And the whole piano playing, as crazy it is, and he was a brilliant musician, passionate guy. And a little bit about Keith Green. I mean, Keith Green's been influencing me for a lot of years. This is one of the first albums I had of Keith Green. It's got Rushing Wind, You Put This Love in My Heart, Grace by Which I Stand, Your Love Broke Through, He'll Take Care of the Rest, The Sheep and the Goats, and Asleep in the Light. Sleep in the Light has influenced my entire ministry. And what's odd about that is that Keith Green died in a plane accident in 1982 at 28 years old. 28. That's just sad. 2 of his kids went down in that plane with him, as well as a family of 6 and a pilot who the family of 6 were going to go into missions as a family, and then his daughter, his wife Melanie, was left, didn't go up in the plane. She was taking care of some family stuff and was pregnant, and had one girl with her. So these 2 girls, one unborn when he died at 28, have lived their whole life without their daddy, but 28 years old. And Keith Green, he influences me. I'm a 63-year-old man right now, and he's influenced me with his passion, his love for Jesus, his total abandonment to God's kingdom and God's will for his life. Total. And it's kind of got something to do with the prodigal. My son told me this story recently. I think it's in the book that Melanie, his wife, wrote called No Compromise, about Keith. But Keith he was a brilliant musician. He actually was a signed artist and wrote songs when he was a young man. He was on a television show to highlight that when he was a little kid. But he became very confused and very mixed up. He started looking for answers and all kinds of weird religious things and drugs and other things. And when he came to Christ, it transformed him. And he was so committed to abandoning everything to God, to have no idols before God, and music had been such an important part of his life, the entire focus of his life, that he gave music up for God. He didn't want it to be an idol. He didn't want it to be in his way. He gave music up for God, and this guy was brilliant. And he was invited to perform after having given up music at an event, some kind of Christian large event, and they asked him to come and perform, and he felt that God was approving of it, smiling on that, nudging him towards it, so he went. And he, at that event of all these believers and all these different things, played the Prodigal Suite, the song that we experienced on Easter, as only Keith can play it, very hard keys, very crazy, and with his passionate voice. And it just infected that whole event. I mean, people were standing and crying and weeping. Oh, and by the way, my son just texted me, it's Melody Green, it's not Melanie Green, I'm sorry. I knew that. Sometimes I talk too much, so Melody Green, Keith's wife, sorry. But anyway, people were weeping and crying, and lives were changing. People were making spiritual decisions because of the way he sang The Prodigal, and God just poured out his Spirit, affirmed, obviously, that he was supposed to be using music at that event. But afterward, Keith said that while playing The Prodigal, all lives changing, God poured his grace down, but while playing The Prodigal in that moment, while he was ministering to others, God gave him his music back. He knew he was called to use music for his ministry. It's kind of like Abraham sacrificing Isaac. God didn't want Abraham to kill Isaac. God wanted Abraham to know that his commitment to God was so great that he would even let go of the thing he loved most on the planet, Isaac. And Keith kind of offering music like Isaac. I'm willing to give this up for love of you. I love you more than my music. God was able to give him that music back in that moment and say, now use it for me, just like Isaac was supposed to be for God's promises. And what really impacted me, and my son actually said this too, he goes, what impacted me, what impacted us, was that Keith died in 1982, 28 years old, way too soon. But 40 years later, after his death, God used that same song that was changing lives when he was performing at that event, that same song that God used to change Keith's entire focus and ministry and commitment in life. God used that same song to minister to us and change our lives in our context here these 40 years, 4 decades later. And it reminded me of a passage of Scripture, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4. It's the great Hall of Faith chapter. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. Abel lived by faith. And he said, by faith he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And so he lived a life of faith. He lived a life of faith before God. But then God says this at the end of Hebrews 11:4. And by faith, Abel still speaks even though he's dead. And by faith, Abel still speaks even though he's dead. Because he lived a life of faith, and then God recorded that story for us, Abel still influences people toward faith, though he's been dead for thousands of years. And the same thing is true of Keith Green. And my son asked me, man, why does God, 28 years old, think of the impact he could have made, think about the losses. And it's true, and I don't have answers. But who knows but that this guy dying at 28 didn't make his message a billion times more powerful and impacting through the generations, impacting even our lives these 40 years later. Would that have happened had he not died? I don't know. Can't answer it. There's another favorite. Gary Veenstra said something earlier in a comment here, and one of his sign-offs on his emails it's a quote by Jim Elliot. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. And I told Blake, I said, it's the same thing with Jim Elliot. This guy died as a very young man. And yet God used him to transform generation after generation of people to become called and encouraged in ministry, including me. He was younger than I was when he died, even when I went into ministry, basically. And yet he, even now, impacts my life. So God poured into them a grace that allowed them to accomplish everything and then change. They, being dead, still speak. But imagine if Keith Green hadn't come to faith and had used his talent for other things. Who cares? But instead, because he was willing to give his music to God, and he didn't want even his first love to be loved more than God, gave his music to God, God gave it back, and then he's used it to transform lives, even us this Easter. And I just want to encourage you, he being dead yet speaks, I want to encourage you, don't let anything get in the way of you loving God first. Because it's in living that kind of life that you can ultimately make a difference that lasts forever. Like Abel, like Keith Green, like everybody who lives for Jesus. So that's kind of my thought that I had coming out of the prodigal. I think it's a great backstory to what we experienced, and I hope it helps you. I'm going to come over here and see what you're saying about these things, and then we're going to pray together and get out of here, okay? So Peggy Blood, wow, Keith's sacrifice was used as a seed that has been bearing fruit for 40 years. For sure, Peggy. Kenneth Harding, I used to sing the song, You Put This Love in My Heart, that Keith Green wrote. I absolutely love Keith Green music also. Thanks, Ken. Me too. He influenced me as a young man. When I came to faith, I was pretty locked into a very rigid and strict kind of expression of Christian faith. And God used Keith Green to help me to see outside of that box that they were trying to put me in. And God used Keith Green to influence me in my younger days to realize how important it was to tell God's truth in a language that people could understand in the generation in which God called me to serve. And so that was an impact that impacted the entire philosophy of ministry and leadership I've had for all these years. And it's a guy I never met. It's a guy I never got to hear live. But he influenced me in that way, and it's just crazy. Wayne Curtis said, I was able to see him in person twice to experience his song last week in such an epic way, only God. And I have to tell you, I know I'm not supposed to be jealous and envious, but Wayne, I'm pretty jealous and pretty envious that you got to see him twice. I've met a lot of people in the course of my ministry who've been able. One lady who used to come to Northridge was able to lean against the piano he was playing at one event. That just blows my mind. See what else you guys have said. I used to sing a song, Lord, You Are Beautiful, to my kids growing up at bedtime. That's cool, Kim. Kim Kennedy, that's really cool. That's a great song, Lord, You Are Beautiful. And another one of his worship songs, a little bit lower key, he was really more of a passionate player, but was There Is a Redeemer. Man, I love that song. Sue said, we absolutely loved the service last week. It was so moving. Thanks, Sue. Thanks for being a part of Northridge. This ministry loves you back. Thomas said, I have never been to such a wonderful church. I can't see myself going anywhere. My calling is there. Thank you so much, Pastor Brad. Thanks. The pianist was amazing. Erica said, see, Suzanne, you're amazing. Janice said, on Good Friday, I saw an old coworker that saw me from a distance. It was her first time back to Northridge. That's cool. Patty Daig said, I was able to share the message of the prodigal. We saw that. So, hey, really, Keith Green, such a gifted musician, so talented. And he was willing to give up his music so that it wouldn't get in the way of his love for God. Let me ask you a question. What is it that you love in your life that, if you're not careful, could get in the way of your love for God or eclipse your love for God? Be careful with that. Could you, like Abraham with Isaac and like Keith with his music, could you give that to God and trust him as to whether or not he really ever wants you to have it back or not? I think that's the only way we can love God. You know, our love for others has to appear as if it was even hate compared to our love for God. What is it in your life that could eclipse, or right now is eclipsing, your love for God? You need to abandon that. You need to yield that to him. You need to give that to him. And just know this, then God will use you in a way where even years after you're gone, your life can still make a difference. I don't know about you, but I want my life to count long after I'm no longer disturbing the air with my breath. I'm no longer disturbing the ground with my footsteps. I want my life to count for eternity. And it only happens if we love him first. Love the Lord our God with our whole mind, with our whole heart, with our whole soul, with all of our strength. Him first and him only, and then everything else flows out of that. So I want to encourage you with that. Thank you for engaging with me on this Thursday Live. I'm so thrilled that we get to connect this way, and I hope that you'll keep showing up. Would you like this, and would you subscribe to this, and would you share this with others, this Thursday Live, so that we can keep spreading our wings out? And right now I want to pray with you, all right? Father in heaven, I thank you so much for how you work and how faithful you are. And I just really want to thank you for Keith Green and for the impact of his ministry in our lives, for how even in this last Easter service we were able to experience the impact of it. Thank you for creating talent like that. Thank you for saving and redeeming talent like that. And thanks for allowing it the free course into our lives and world. And God, I just want to pray grace into the lives of Keith's family, who still for now all these 40 years have had to do life and ministry and without him. Just give them grace. Be with Melody and with her two girls and all the extended family now, and I'll just thank you for that. And God, I just pray for each one of us that we would, follow the pattern. Love you first, and then everything else flows out of that love, and you can use it to make a big difference in our lives. Thank you for Northridge, the impact we've had on lives this last weekend. I pray that you would just keep speaking into their hearts and their lives and bringing them back to us and letting them be committed to spiritually growing and helping us wake others up to Jesus, showing love, telling truth. And then, God, I do pray for the Ukrainian offering that close to $750,000 we're able to send. Give grace to Samaritan's Purse as they distribute that to these local churches within Ukraine and then on the border states of Ukraine. And then, God, pour your grace in as they then extend to the basic needs and food provisions of these Ukrainians. And may, Jesus, you be discovered by thousands, millions, because of the gift that we were able to send over there, and use it like the 2 fish and the 5 loaves to feed just millions of people the spiritual truth of the hope of Jesus, and we'll thank you for it. And I pray that you'd bring peace to Ukraine, God. Bring peace and safety there. And now for the going forward as Northridge, bless the new series that's coming down this coming weekend and anoint it, and anoint each and every one who's participated in this Thursday Live with your grace. And I'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I appreciate you all, love you all, care about you. Thanks for joining me. And whether you're live, which I really appreciate engaging you, or whether you see it on demand, thanks for engaging, being here. This weekend, new series on relationships, unique series. It's not, don't feel like, oh, great, if I'm single, it's not for me, or, oh, this is only for parenting. No, this is a general relationship series that will help you wherever you're at in your relationship life single, married, young, old. It's going to be very interesting. And we're calling it Relationship Jenga because, you know, if you pull the God piece out, everything collapses. We're going to try and, you know, teach you how to do Relationship Jenga. And this weekend's going to be a special start of it. Hope you'll be there for that. And hope to see you again next week for Thursday Live. Thanks, everybody.